is not just an aberration of the Russian policy. It's not just a territorial dispute between Russia and Ukraine. The goal of Russia to subjugate Ukraine and to use this as a leverage against the European Union and NATO. The Russians want to destroy those organizations.
A plot to assassinate President Zelensky in Poland has been foiled by the arrest of an alleged spy for Russian military intelligence. That's according to authorities in Warsaw. The man, a Polish citizen identified only as Pavel K., had contacted Russia's intelligence agency, the GRU, and offered to help them kill the Ukrainian leader. That's according to the Polish State Prosecutor's Office. Well, Alexander Khara is a former advisor for the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, and he told me how credible he thought these reports were.
We should have a look at the modus operandi of our Russian brothers, and certainly we cannot rule out anything. If the Skripal's case has learned someone who has taught something to all of us, is that the Russians are operating like in the previous centuries. They easily can murder their political opponents, not to mention Navalny and not to mention some other oppositional figures. So I don't think that it's not possible at all. And I believe it was a planned thing in the beginning of the invasion to use saboteurs groups implanted before the invasion to capture Ukrainian leadership and possibly murder it, with the main goal to decapitate Ukrainian statehood and then to install some puppet figure over Ukraine.
But how alarmed would you be if it turns out that the Russians really were attempting to assassinate President Zelensky not in Ukraine or on Ukrainian territory, but a Polish airport right next to the border with Ukraine, a Polish airport that is guarded by US Patriot anti-aircraft systems, but which may have vulnerabilities that Pavel K. was trying to exploit?
We've seen many attempts of the Russians to assassinate their enemies. There was an explosion in Bulgaria of a munition depot and several attempts to kill one of the arms dealers here. So we understand that Russians infiltrated deeply into the Western societies, and they have their spies, they have their agents of influence, and so on and so on. So certainly it's possible, even in Poland, is one of the strongest supporters of Ukraine, to have people who may accommodate Russian interests. And certainly it's the sign that the counterintelligence agencies, not just in Poland, but across the European Union and NATO, should pay attention, and certainly they need to do more to root out the Russian influence and to protect their interests on their own soil.
And the Polish authorities have detained this man and will currently be investigating what he was doing, may be putting him on trial. What involvement will the Ukrainian authorities and Ukrainian intelligence have with this operation?
Well, I cannot tell anything because you know that the intelligence agencies are operating in shadow, so I don't have any information on that. But certainly they will be. I mean, Ukrainian intelligence agencies would be cooperating with the Polish friends for sure to understand how it was planned, who was behind it, and what are the actors may play and may not be, let's say, not step out of the shadow that Ukraine and Poland need to deal with.
And how worried are you about infiltration of very sensitive positions within the Ukrainian territory? Because we've seen numerous attempts to sweep out and expose possible traitors, as you would call them, who are acting for Russia. But what about now?
Well, certainly in any war, there is a part of population who, from the ideological point of view, or being blackmailed, they may cooperate with an enemy. And have a look at the Second World War, many examples of such cooperation. And we believe that we still have some Russian agents even in our government. Even though recently there were no such notorious cases that our SBU service captured someone, but regular Ukrainians, there are some cases each and every week that someone is tipping the Russian intelligence services about targets or the results of the Russian missile or drone attack, and so on and so on. So our counterintelligence is working on it, and we understand that we have many of that kind of evidence or people willing to cooperate with an enemy, even though this enemy kills not just some opposition group of people, but their own neighbors and possibly even those who made this tip. So it's until the Russians are defeated, certainly they will do everything possible, employ every opportunity that they have in Ukraine. And in Ukraine, they invested heavily during these 30 years of independence of Ukraine. And given that we speak almost the same language, and at least half of Ukrainians speak Russian, so it's much easier for the Russians to pretend that there might be Ukrainians who want something, to mislead and to use in blind to the Ukrainians against their own compatriots or possibly authorities. We have this threat, but our counterintelligence is pretty effective, and we see many cases when they are capturing those who are working on the Russians.
And Alexander, you'd say until the Russians are defeated, but if you hear what the Ukrainian Prime Minister has been saying today, warning of World War III if Ukraine is defeated, and President Zelensky sounding increasingly desperate for the Americans to supply those weapons, for the House of Representatives vote on military package for Ukraine to go the right way. How desperate are things at the moment on the battlefield?
First of all, I just remind my Western partners, so my Western friends and experts, that we are fighting the war that the whole NATO, including the United States, we are preparing to fight in the worst-case scenario against Soviet Union at that time. And certainly Russia has all those capabilities, production capabilities, number of tanks and other, and plus we have this asymmetry in demography, 140 million against 40 million. And certainly it means that until we won this war, we're in danger. And not just we are in danger, it's fortunately on the 10th years of the war, because the war started not on the February of 2022, but in February 2014. At that time, we were calling out our partner. We were talking to our partners. We're trying to persuade them that this is not just an aberration of the Russian policy. It's not just a territorial dispute between Russia and Ukraine. The goal of Russia to subjugate Ukraine and to use this as a leverage against the European Union and NATO. The Russians want to destroy those organizations.
That was Alexander Khara, former advisor to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.